What's up?
What's up? Play any new games lately?
Nah, man, nothing good out right now.
Yeah, man, I feel you.
Hey, I got an idea. Hello and welcome to Press Start the Pitch, the podcast where game ideas get powered up, broken down, and judged one pitch at a time. This is episode 1 of our podcast series, and we're kicking things off with an interesting one. My name's Joe,
And I'm Chad.
and we're just a couple of gamers who spend way too much time playing games, just as much time talking about them. This show is about putting those ideas on the table and seeing if they'd really work. Each week, one of us will pitch a brand new game concept, then we'll break it down, starting with the gameplay, challenges, whether people would actually buy it, and finally decide if we should sell it or shelve it. So with that out of the way, let's get to our very first pitch. Take it away, Chad.
How's it going, everyone? So, first episode, big deal. We're going to be looking at an idea that I've been bouncing around for a while. Lately, I've been playing some farming sim, trucking sim games like that. And I noticed there's one problem with all these games. I think Joe's kind of had this experience too.
Oh, yeah.
Is what if all the simulator games, so your trucking, trains, shipping, maybe even flight sims, were all interconnected in one world. So you're not just one worker in a world, you're just one person in a massive supply chain of the environment around you, so the world around you. So basically, the concept I have is trucking sim, obviously, big part of our supply chain in the US. You point A to point B, but games like farming sim, for example, whenever you go and do the farming and everything, you simply take it to a sell point on the map or a train and watch it disappear from the map. What if someone was actually there in the world to pick up your crops or your products that you made at your facility, whether it be grains or milk or whatever? What if you could actually have someone in a living world and then they take your product from your farm and take it somewhere else in the world? So say we have like a map of the US like ATS or something like that where you go point A to point B, but imagine if you pick up in Nebraska from people playing essentially their version of farming sim, and you as a trucker have to drive it to where they need it delivered across the map. And it may not be just, from the farm to the factory, but it could be from the farm to the rail yard or the farm to the port, or picking up something from the port to bring to the farm or one of the production facilities or something like that. And essentially creating this massive logistics simulator at its root. And it would grow as the players grow. So people would buy farms, buy warehouses, buy factories, production facilities. And I'm not necessarily saying we go as far as the factories having little individual things where you have like a factory sim within it. It doesn't necessarily have to go that far. You could buy facilities that are automated or whatever, but I think it would be very important to look at it and see the world living. So if you're driving a truck across Nebraska and you look out your window, instead of seeing a static scenery or NPCs, you could actually see players interacting on a farm and doing things. And, CB radios would be alive with people talking and stuff. You would have maybe a contract market where people are posting jobs and posting bids. And I'm a truck driver. I can take this something from here to here. I have a flatbed or whatever. There's a million different ways to go about it. But I mean, that's essentially the base of my pitch, Joe.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's awesome. I know that we both play those games, and we're always left at the end of it like, man, I wish there was something else further we could do. And it just seems that combining those games, I think, would just allow people to I mean, right here in one of my notes, I put scratches that itch of looped gameplay. And using the example of like farming sim, where you grow your crops, you harvest your crops, and then it's like, oh, just take it to this sell point and sell it, and then it's over, and then you're either skipping through months or just moving on to do something else. It would be awesome if like you know in the other part of the world, across the country or whatever, there's some need for that crop, and then you have to then schedule somebody to come pick it up, and it just your crop doesn't end right there at the sell point. It moves on to the next point. I think that'd be an awesome thing to have in the game.
I mean, and just bouncing back with what you said, that's a big issue we've ran into with games like Farming Sim, and I think you can agree with me there.
Yeah,
Is you take something to a sell point and that's it. Like once it goes into the grain elevator, you don't that's it for the process. Even when you go to production, like if you were to take wheat to the bakery or whatever like that, that's all you see of it. And then you also run into the winter months like we recently played, and that's one of the big drawbacks of Farming Sim is if you're doing seasonal growth, you run out of things to do in the winter. And I think
absolutely.
Farming Sim, for example, they tried to add the winter mechanics, the plowing and stuff like that, but it's really still very empty.
Right. And I mean, even if I'm not, having to ship my crop like from one side of the country to the other, I still think it would be cool that if you're, say you're doing a farm in, I don't know, Nebraska, and you can find some local, not even local, but within that state places to drop stuff off. You, as that company, can buy trucks, and then instead of just taking it to a sell point, you could drive it to another part of the state where another player has a factory or another player has a rail yard or whatever, and transfer that to them. And it's just not, oh, I'm take it here and just sell it and get my money and move on. It adds that extra level and more of a gameplay loop that you can kind of plan for the long run for, I think.
I think so too. And you also, from that, you're running into the factor of, so let's say you're farming in, I don't know, a northern state. So you're going to have, and I think a very important part of this game would be seasonals. So I think it should use, and I mean, I guess that's something we will go into shortly, but say the game has seasonals. So whether it be one for one season, so, the winter months, it portrays winter weather. So your northern states, farming's not really a thing in the winter. But down south in the southern states, you might have some type of crop still going in the later months where up north's going into freezing temps and down south. So even that, if there was a way you could not necessarily teleport, but catch a plane or something, and I'm not saying necessarily go into detail of, oh, well, you got to catch a player made flight. I think NPC mechanics should still be a thing there. But say you fly from Nebraska to, I don't know, Louisiana or South Texas or something, and it's still warm down there, even though it's, freezing temperatures up north, you can go down south and do things as a contract worker. And I think contracts would be a big factor of the game. Is imagine going into as far as like, obviously the contracts of the factor of, oh, I need a trucker to take grain from point A to point B to a grain mill is there. But what if you could, as a farmer, put, hey, I need hands to help me with harvesting these crops in this window at this time at this place, and people could actually, go and, work for the farmer.
Yeah, and I mean they could also offer up equipment too. I mean, I don't think it's as realistic as to like trailer your equipment across the country or to another state to do work, but I mean, say you have another farmer that's south in your state somewhere, and you can load your tractors up if they're just getting started and kind of offer them a hand. I think it adds a real unique aspect to the game. Um I mean, the size of the game, you said it's, the size of like a ATS map or something like
Yeah.
that, where it's a scale of the United States. So it's not overly large. It still takes you, a couple hours to drive from one end to the other to give you that relative space.
Yeah.
Um, so realistically, there's so much space in that game that you can have multiple farms. Like how big, I guess, is a server going to be? Like, what would you want to see? Like MMO based or, 100 people? What do you think?
I mean, that's kind of where it comes down to, because that's where you start getting into the logistics of what makes the game feasible versus not. Is obviously if you tried to do a 1-for-1 scale of the country, it's near impossible to make the game. I mean, just for example, Texas alone would take 2 days, but I think if I recall correctly, ATS is like 5th scale. So every 1 mile is essentially 5 miles in the game or whatever. You know, what would be 1 mile in real life is equivalent to 5 or whatever. It's a 5th. So it still takes you a while to go from point A to point B, but it's not but what I think would be a potentially interesting aspect for it is almost do zones on the map. So you go to, say, Nebraska, and you find farming zones in Nebraska. And these are essentially scaled out regions. So say from Nebraska to Wyoming on I-80 or I-70 or whichever it is, I'm not looking at a map, but that nowhere land that you really wouldn't have any players farming or doing production or anything like that, that's the scaled down. So whether it be 5th scale, 10th scale, whatever it is, that's your compressed part of the map. That's what makes your country much smaller. But then you get into these farming regions. I think it would be like a regional system. And you could vouch for this from like MMOs. An example is a lot of the MMO, the in between the big cities or regions are really not a lot there. They kind of compress it.
Right.
And they're not going to make every little village huge, but then they're going to have their focal points, their big cities, and those are going to have all the detail. So
Yeah.
Similar thing here is you'll get into like regions. So like your major cities, and it's very similar to ATS does this, is a lot of your small towns are very basic. They might have 1 or 2 points of interest in the town, but it's obviously much smaller than it would be in real life. But then you go somewhere like Vegas or LA or something like that, and they're very detailed and more scaled out and things like that. And I think you do something similar to this where you have farming regions. So if someone wants to farm, they can go to Nebraska, and, states that are more known for agricultural things would have obviously more farming region. And they might not all be one region, but they'll be packs. So certain areas will have farming regions. So Nebraska might have, for example, 20 farm regions. And that could have, you go into each region and there be, 5-10 farms for all, it could be less, it could be more, depending on the size of it. So when you go in as a new player and you want to buy a farm, you look for an empty spot in one of these farm regions. Or if you want a truck, obviously you just go into one of these towns or cities and you're looking for like a building lot. Like you could do building lots where you could buy a parcel or something similar to other games. And on that parcel is where you could build your garage or your production facility or whatever, is you could build it on these industry plots or commercial plots. Right. And it would make the game very modular because you don't want to go open sandbox like something like a survival game like Rust or whatever games, Minecraft even, for an example. You don't want to be able to build anywhere. It wouldn't be feasible. And you would also have people they would space themselves too far apart in some cases, and it would just be unfeasible for drivers because then you run into the issue of roads. Well, how do you get to these points if people are able to build anywhere? And then you could also control certain states, states that aren't good for agricultural, like, the middle of the desert. You're not going to have, tobacco farms and corn crops in the middle of the high desert. Just not going to happen. But there's nothing to say you couldn't have, for example, an oil production facility. I mean, there's another thing we've seen games recently, the oil simulators, drilling for oil, things like that. Put oil rigs. That could be an expansion, or even in the base game is you can do oil rig work, and that could be a cool simulator aspect to add to the game. And that adds a whole nother logistics side to it. Because then you got the drilling, the wells, the rigs, the refineries, moving the products. You have drill water and all that stuff in between. But you could build those in, industrial plots that have oil. Maybe certain states have like a higher chance of oil. Like you can, like something like City Skyline, where you can look at the plot and it's like, oh, it has an 89% chance of oil or a 40% chance of oil. And you could buy it and try. Or maybe it's as simple as, does this land have oil? Yes, no.
Right. Now, I have a question for you too.
Yep.
So I love the player to player aspect of everything, where somebody's farming, they farm their crops, they need to ship it, whatever, it needs to go on a truck to a train station to wherever, or go get processed far away. It just really, that could be endless, right? Because
Yeah.
the game could decide, like, hey, there's a demand for this in this state. We have to ship out X amount of product over there. Now, there's obviously a player ran gameplay loop, right?
Yep.
That I guess you would say is kind of driven by the game's supply and demand. Now, would you want to have like game generated missions or quests for them to do if there's like nobody online? How would you balance between the two?
I think again, another great example of it would be like American Truck Simulator. And even Farming Sim has it now with the contract systems. Is American Truck, you have essentially your job market and your freight market. So it's like the difference between owning a trailer versus not owning your truck or trailer or whatever. And you can go in and just essentially find quick jobs. So as the trucking aspect, you could go into the job market, and if there's no players online, you'd have it divided between like the player market and the NPC market. So if you go on the player market, obviously it's player dictated. So you have, say, you look at all the contracts, the only contracts you're finding on the East Coast, and you're in Arizona. So you're not going to want to drive, cross the map to go try and find a player job. So you could easily go over to the quote NPC market or the regular job market. And that's going to, do the usual generation of what's local to you. And that's where I think you have to have the whole player economy driven. So player buildings, player productions, player this, player that. But at the same time, there has to be like map built-in facilities. So you have built-in refineries, built-in production plants, built-in even farms that might just be there in areas that aren't considered quote zones or whatever we call it. So you can still move freight. And that would also allow too, like say someone goes in, because we don't, in the concept of the game, you don't want to limit a player because of what they chose. So say you go into the game, Joe, and you want to run grain mill or right. a soup factory, whatever it might be. But you don't want to do farming. You don't want to do trucking. You don't want to do the obvious jump in and gimmies. And so you're like, I want to do some production work. And I don't think you'd go as crazy as to like feel like you're working as a person in a plant. But I think you run these facilities. So you'd have like warehouse, forklift, equipment stuff, kind of go around. You can click on the machines like something like Stationeers where it's not, Stationeers is highly detailed, but you could go in and set machines, but you got to manage the logistics coming in and out. So you got to have your raw products and your finished products. You got to manage that.
Right. You're detailed enough, but not over the top crazy. Like you feel like a worker. Yeah.
Yeah. You're going to feel more like a manager. And so you're managing the input of your products, the output. I mean, you don't have to do the cheesy mini games like, wrench the machine, it broke down. But like you can assemble, like, say I buy a building to do it. Because this is where I think it could be really stand out. And it's possible because we've seen games do this. And so you buy your lot, you start with your whatever money in the game. You can either work for people to develop your money or maybe get a bank loan. Because I think that would be reasonable, like American Truck Simulator. If you start, you can get a loan pretty quick and get your own rig and do your own work. So I think you start that game, you can do that, and you can get a small loan that could get you a small lot, and you could do as simple as like small, medium, large lots, extra large lots even. And so let's say you get enough money, you can buy a small industrial or commercial lot. You build your industrial lot, then it gives you, I don't believe you should go like sim level building, but like it gives you a little grid outline of everything in your planning screen, and you can buy a warehouse building or buy a production building or whatever that'll fit on this lot. You build it with the money, it places the building for you. Then you have inside, you would have slots. So you would be like, I want to use this small building has 5 slots. Well, when you click on the slot, the build, you can do, be like slot 1 is an assembly line. Slot 2 is warehouse shelving. Slot 3 is a refrigerator or a cooler or whatever it might be. And I mean, it's endless of how you could set it up. But essentially, you could scale yourself down so a new player could easily pick it up. And so I'm going to build an assembly line with a warehouse and a cooler or whatever to store the products, both input and output. Then you go into your little computer part of it, your menu or whatever, and you're like, okay, I want to manufacture this. So there'd be different type of assembly lines that can manufacture different things. So you're like, okay, I'm going to do food. And you set whatever food you're going to make, or bread or whatever. We'll use bread as an example because we've been talking about grains. And it's like, okay, well, you need, 1 ton of wheat and either water from a connection or water brought in a truck. And so you could either have public water. So if you built your place in the middle of nowhere that doesn't have public water, you might need a well on your property, which could be one of these slots that you build on your property. And so you do this. Now you need to get wheat into your plant to obviously make your bread. So you have one option or two options. You could either, one, buy it through the quote NPC market and it'll deliver it. Or you can go to the player market and either post, or you might have a farmer saying, hey, I have 10 tons of wheat at this price and I'm in Nebraska. And you could approach that farmer and be like, look, I want to buy your 10 tons of wheat. I need it here in Missouri. And then you create that supply chain.
Yeah.
And that's where then you got to find a trucker. And the farmer could either, or, well, in this case, it would probably be the receiver that would order the trucking. But he could be like, then he posts a bid on the market saying, hey, I need a truck driver to bring 10 tons of grain from Nebraska to Missouri. But if there's not anyone available, he could just pay for an NPC, and after so long, it arrives.
Yeah, it gets a good time limit to where it's not just instant.
Yeah, and so he either has the option, to buy it from the NPC and, it magically appears after so long in the warehouse. Or, you could have, a truck appear or whatever that brings it in magically. Or he, the player encourage market. And obviously the thing is that the appeals, because you got to go, well, why would people want to use the player market if you can just NPC it in? As well, probably the prices will be better. Yeah. Or they might get it there way quicker. But that way you're not restricting it. And then obviously the truckers could just go to the contract market for the NPC and just grab any load that's available and take it. And then they could go from there. Same thing with the farmer. Is if farmer can't find anyone to buy their grain, they should be able to just sell it on a public market at NPC prices, whatever the rate is for the area. Right. And as you were saying before, the player-based economy, I think supply and demand would be an important part of the game, because it would also, you could control the exploitation of the markets. So like if you have people that are like, oh, I can just farm wheat over and over and over and over and over and just give it to my buddy and he can sell it for bread. I think if you saturate the markets and products, it'll hurt the market price overall.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And especially too, like if you're talking about the whole season aspect of it, like certain products are going to be more expensive in certain seasons because they're out of growing seasons. So that would limit people too from, I'm just going to spam this because it sells the most and this is what people need the most. It's like, no, there should be some sort of balance system to where like I'm not growing this certain product in the winter because it's, it's not going to be a good time to sell it when it grows or whatever, mm-hmm. Like there's definitely a change with the seasons, and that could play a factor in it too. I mean, I don't know, could there be some sort of like, I think weather in the game, I mean, if we're just talking from a gameplay mechanic, like weather's going to affect your your shipments. Like if you're trying to ship something during the winter and there's a massive blizzard, that's going to make it a lot harder for you to transport something. So that could be a really cool concept.
I think what could be really cool off of that too is, say, and this is getting back into this player driven economy. So, not everyone wants to play farming or trucking or whatever. Like I said, and I'm thinking more of like the little guy in this situation, like the market that I feel is missed, which is the connecting piece that connects all this together. So you could build a warehouse, for example, or a grain, what do they call it? A granary or a co-op or something like that. So say you, as the player, say you do trucking, but you make good money trucking. So you buy a grain storage facility. Like you build these massive silo facilities, and then you tell the farmers, hey, I'll buy your grain at, 50 cents on the dollar from what it's going right now, but I'll take all of it. And you store this stuff wherever it might be. And then when those price hits, you have all this stored product. And then the farmers, they're not suffering as bad or whatever. Or if you have a co-op, everyone can keep their grain safe. And then, it's no different than farming, same as storing your silos. Is you have these guys that can manage and essentially broker players making money. So whether it be the farmer just sells it to them for this rate, or they all agree when you sell it, we all get 80%, the grain mill keeps 20%. And whatever they sell it for is what we get. And you could run into that in, I think, warehouses too. I think a lot of your finished products, but where I was getting to on, I tangented there, is tiered. So let's talk about like the, I guess, supply chain products.
Yeah.
So we're talking like on the basic level, you have your raw resources, whether it be, because you could have, here's one you would like, is the like mining aspect to the game, like quarries and things like that. It's been done in games in different forms, whether it be something like Out of Ore or modded Farm Sim or whatever. Add some quarrying. I mean, we're not talking like gold mine simulator prospecting necessarily. I mean, sure, you could try, but gold, you're not going to have truckloads of gold coming out of the hills. But quarrying, so gravel, stuff like that. So you're talking your raw resources, which would be, your raw grains and your rocks and gravel and ores and things like that. And they need to go from point A to point B. And again, this would go back to that system I was talking about with your slot driven system. So you could do this with farms too, even if we wanted to go that, and it would simplify the system because you wouldn't have free placing as much. But I know free placing would be nice in the terms of like decorating and making things look unique, but like slot based things. So like, say you have, I don't know, 20 slots on a farm, and you could place either a field or a greenhouse, for example. Like if you didn't want to build a open field on that, you could build a greenhouse and do indoor farming. And obviously it'd be a lot more expensive, probably have more expenses, but I kind of feel like that might have to be the drawback to the game.
So it doesn't get so overwhelming with stuff that it's just lagging out,
Yeah, because if you
go into an area, got a bunch of placeables, you start lagging your game out.
Yeah, because I think if you did like farming sim where you have like create fields, a lot of people are going to min-max that, and they're going to take every inch of their plot. Like they're going to farm to the edge. And you're going to start running into things. Whereas if you have plots on the farm, and they don't all have to be square. By all means, they don't all have to be square. But like you could have different shaped slots. So like even on farms, like you could have the round fields with the auto irrigation booms, the rotating irrigation. You could create those round farm plots, things like that. But if you did that slot, it would create almost a static entity that wouldn't be as intense on the servers or even player computers. It'd be more performance friendly, but you should be able to still farm it to the degree of something like Farm Sim, like plow it, seed it, do all that where it looks just like it would, where you can actually plow it. It's just, it gives an area. Like you're not going to be able to just create fields. Like it'll do the whole, you can't plow here if you're outside a field limit. And I think that could be a potential thing. But then like I said, you're opening up these slots where one, it creates a uniform system for like production and everything like that, is where you can build assembly lines. But I don't think it's as simple as, I'm going to build this factory, the building's there, and buy an assembly line, pay $20,000, an assembly line magically appears. I think you have to get the like assembly line. Like you have to order it from a facility, whether it be map provided or player provided. And so you need a quote assembly line kit. And when you buy it, So say you have your slot, you click your slot, you're like, I'm going to put an assembly line here. Pops up a prompt or a window or whatever, and it's like, okay, do you want to create a like bid on the market to buy one from someone? So you could buy someone's old equipment if you wanted to. I think would be huge. Or you can click buy new, and it gives you a list of production facilities in the country that can make that assembly line or provide that assembly line. And then it could even have, as far as right next to that, it shows how many they have in stock. So if you had a player place, say a player factory that can make assembly lines, it might show they have 0 in stock. So you would have to wait for them to make your assembly line before you could buy it from them. And it would just be, a package that could be loaded on a truck and brought to you. And I don't know. What do you think on that?
I mean, I think that's a good idea. I think that it adds to the logistics side of it, right? Like, if you're trying to combine all these, simulators that really just run off logistics at the end of the day, right? Especially ATS being one of them. Like, you are part of the logistic chain that's created by the game. I don't think that somebody should have to, unless it's made like locally or whatever. I think that, like you said, it has to be put in with a request, and then it takes a couple of days or whatever, however long it takes. Like, if there's a truck driver on, he can go pick it up and he can bring it to you in a couple hours.
Yep.
Like, then you get to set it up. I think that's a smart way to do it, rather than it just being that, okay, I'm going to put, an assembly line here, click, boom. Okay. It's there,
Yep.
I think that it gives that time that's going to like really make the player be like, okay, I'm going to put this order in, and then like see if it gets them next time they log on the game. Like, they could see, oh, my order's in route. Like, it actually would feel like a real life thing. Like, I placed an order and somebody's picking it up, bringing it to me.
Exactly.
I think that could be a really cool thing. And I think that, there's so many people that play these simulators that there could be something for everybody to do in them.
Exactly.
And instead of everybody playing their separate games, like, I'm going to go play Farming Sim. This guy's like, I'm going to go play ATS. It's like, we have this one game that we can all get on and just like make this economy. It's like sandboxy, but at the same time, it's not sandboxy. You're not just doing fetch quests. I don't know. It's different. It's interesting. I mean, it's a really good concept, I think.
I agree. And it goes back to, like you said, is that it's creating that satisfaction of watching the process complete. And it would work too, as if you did the market, because I think that's the core of this game. Isn't the trucking or farming or factories or mining or whatever it might be. I think the core of this game comes down to that market menu. It's basically like a market logistics simulator that happens to have trucking and all that modeled out. Is because you could go as far as like, here's a thing that we haven't even touched base on, is like, for example, farming. Let's go back to the root of the game. That was kind of what our thing is. What if Farming Simulator was meeting with American Truck Simulator?
Yeah.
Is, okay, I bought a farm. Now I need the implements. So I need tractors. I need this. Well, you go onto this marketplace and you have your local, your regional, and your national markets. You could sort it by either locally, which is in your region, like I said, your farming zone, which is basically like a town or a city. Then you have your regional, which would be like your state level. Then you have your national, which will search the entire country. So you go on there, and obviously you're starting, if you're doing a hard start, then I think you could do servers. And I think they would have to be MMO level servers, unfortunately, to do this right.
Yeah.
I think it would have to be MMO or MMO size servers, the capability. Is so you're like, I need a tractor. Well, I'm doing a hard start. I don't think everyone should start with these $1 million or whatever. I mean, if you wanted to set up like a private server or something, maybe if it was even possible, sure, you could cheat the system or whatever, set up however you want. And maybe private server level, you can only do like a region, like a state or something like that. But to do the national, you would need to be on a public server or pay for access to a server that's capable of doing that. Like, for example, I looked this up just because I wanted to verify. So currently, Trucker MP, which we know is a substantial multiplayer system for ATS. They have on their Euro Truck 2 server 5,000 player capacity.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Now, and that's all over Europe, and it works. Clearly, if they have 5,000, I don't think they ever hit close to that cap, but I'm sure they've had quite a few on there, especially Euro Truck. So let's say we went with a 5,000 person server. It can definitely take place across the country with the NPC system and the state RAM markets and everything like that. I think it, but again, back to what I was saying. So you start a farm, and I think everyone starts out with, a little bit of money. Say everyone starts out with $50,000 or $100,000, which won't go that far. But you need a tractor because you just bought a small farm plot. Because again, I think the slotting and zones and everything is kind of where the system works is. So you need a tractor. You look on your marketplace, you pull out basically your newspaper app. I know that's aging me, but you look in the classifieds. So you can go local, regional, or national, but you can search for used equipment on this market. I think as a farmer, when you upgrade, you can put your old equipment on the market, on the used market.
Yeah.
You don't just directly sell it back to the game.
That was going to be my next point, and sorry if I'm cutting you off, but
You're good.
The player market, when you mentioned that, like it opened up it opened up my mind to it, because that's one of the things that, like, in farming sim that kind of drives me crazy. And, I know they make mods, but they're like, you can sell back for full price and all that stuff. And I think in a game of this scale, like if you've been on the server for a while and you've been playing, you've established yourself and you have a whole bunch of equipment and you're like, I need to sell this used equipment. Well, that would be super beneficial for a new player coming on the server, because they can just go on there and see like, oh, Joe up in wherever, Wyoming, is selling his tractor or truck or whatever, and he's selling it for real cheap. I need to buy that. And then that turns into another logistical thing. Like, oh, there's a truck driver who can go throw it on a trailer and drive it down to me while I get other stuff set up on my farm. And now I'm waiting for the season to come around where I need to plant or whatever. The thing is, it's going to be different for people, is that if we're doing it big server based, like stuff isn't going to happen immediately. It's going to be a long run game where there's a lot of waiting and stuff like that, which is going to, appeal to some people, not to others.
Exactly.
But I think at the start of it, it's going to be real slow. Like if a server gets up and going, it's going to be real slow because people need to have time to, scale up their processes and do whatever. But once it's going, I mean, you're going to have a ton of stuff to do.
Exactly. And I think that's where you come back in and you still have that NPC market. So the player or the server ran market that's automated. And so you can go to the dealership. It's just they're not going to have that selection. Or, the price of convenience is going to outweigh buying something off the market. So you're going to be more encouraged to look at the player market first versus the dealership. And obviously, yeah, but you're running into a new server and, say the game starts out with a couple servers, US, Europe, whatever, and it could expand over time and new servers would spawn and you'd create a new economy. But it's no different than an MMO is like, you got your exchanges on a lot of these MMOs with player sold stuff. And yeah, you're going to go to the dealership, but their stock may be limited and they'll give you the option. So I think like every 24 hours or whatever, the dealership would rotate its stock so it would refresh with new products that it has in stock. And then anything else you could order, and it might take time because of where it's at or how far it's got to come. So be like, oh, well, you can buy a tractor here and it's what we got, and they could have a couple auto-generated used ones or something, or you could sell your tractors back to the dealerships in town at a reduced rate of what you could probably sell it for on the market. But at least you could move it. So then the dealership would stock the used equipment until it, sells. And I think, so you would have that stuff there, but at the same time, the player is going to be always encouraged to look on the market first and see what they can find. And I think, like you said, with, if you're in Missouri and the farmer in Nebraska has your tractor or whatever that you want to buy, you obviously got to figure out the logistics to come and bringing it, either if you got the equipment to go pick it up yourself, or if you know someone that can do it, or you have to put a contract out for it. I think too, you could go down to the level of doing hot shotting, which is a thing in the US, is you could have guys with their pickup trucks and their trailers, their fifth wheels, that could get stuff there a lot easier, but they, limited size capabilities. They can't carry so much. Then you're running into the mechanic of the game of like DOT and police and stuff like that, where you're going to discourage people from driving 110 down I-70 with four tractors on the back of a flatbed. And I think they should have scales and everything like that, where you have to scale loads and stuff. Tractors would have weights, or equipment would have weights, and you got to have the right trailer and the right configuration to haul it legally. Or you could pay for a permit, an oversized permit or whatever. And you don't have to like go into the detail. Oh, you got to stop at every state and register a permit and everything. You just have to go on to your little tablet in game or HUD and be like, I need to buy a permit right now that's good for 24 hours for this.
Right. Yeah.
And that lets you do it. And, then you're getting into like the trucking side, is your hazmats and stuff like that you could also do. And, things like farms is like you get into, this is a side that a lot of people don't see in games, is, your herbicides, your fertilizers, your chemicals, your whatever for your farm or your production facility. Like one thing I used to haul a lot when I drove truck was, plant wash. So it was these chemicals that they would ship that were hazmat on their own because they were corrosive in such large amounts. But basically the vegetables that came off the field, they ran it through a cold wash and they would put this chemical over it, and it would basically clean any chemicals or anything off the plant. It would clean the surfaces. It was like a sanitizer. But thing is, it would get diluted down so much it wouldn't necessarily be bad for you. But, that's things like that, is like, again, back to production facilities. Let's add one more step where it's not just farm the selling point, but farm to processing to selling point. So when your stuff comes off the field, if you're doing like grains, that's not so much an issue. But say you want to do vegetables like lettuce or cucumbers or whatever it might be. Well, there's an extra step with growing those. They're a lot more valuable, but you're going to have to take them to a facility that can wash them and clean them and package them right away, because they'll immediately start decaying. They don't sit in a silo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, there's just so, it could be so deep into like what you can do in this game that it could be endless really. But I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. At least I know we've discussed it, but
yeah,
like you get into these games and it just like the core build of the game and what its purpose is does really good. You look at Farming Sim, you look at ATS, you look at railroading games like either Railroader or, what's the one you play? I can't remember the name of it.
What's it do?
Just the railroading games.
Oh, Derail Valley.
Derail Valley, yeah. Like the stuff's there, like each one of these aspects of the game we're talking about exists. It's just, if you combine them, you get another depth that you can't get in just playing those games alone. Like, yes, with mods, you can do certain things in Farming Sim that you can't do in other games, but like, just feels like instead of just doing the fetch quests, you actually have more of a purpose to doing them, to transporting something. That's what it feels like to me.
I think what you create with these games too is like, when you pick up Farming Sim, for example, you're like, okay, I'm going to play every day this week. This game's going to foster the more of, I'm going to play a little bit today, and then I'm going to come back to it in a couple days. Because if we're talking like a scaled down time frame where, a month's a month, real life or in game. And if we're doing 24-hour clocks, I don't know if we would do that. But like you could pass days in the game. But I think like a month, that way your seasons would line up in real life and stuff like that. The whole reason is I don't want to, time in the game would kind of be tricky because of the whole, what happens if you can only get on at 2 a.m.
right
in the server time.
You're always playing at night.
You're always farming at night and stuff like that. And that wouldn't really work. So we'd have to find a solution for the time scales that would work, whether it be like, oh, well, when you're on like the, maybe it passes days in the game at a reduced rate, but it's not actually passing like days in the maybe the time cycle doesn't match the real time of the server. Maybe it's day and night and it rotates at a different pace than what things are actually doing. But the thing is, that would kind of work with it because you're not trying to force people to play all the time, which I get kind of contradicts the whole concept of making a game, is you want people to play as much as they can. But I think that's the biggest drawback of the game, is figuring out how to scale, how long things take, how long days last or months last, or how seasons are done.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing too, and also to balance people's time in there. Like if it takes a month for a season and your crops are going to take 6 months to grow, like
Yeah,
you're going to be
exactly.
bored as a farmer. But if you have like NPC missions, or if you have other tasks that you can do, like that brings me to my next point too, is like vehicle maintenance. Now, a good thing while there's downtime for farmers is how in depth do you want to go with vehicle maintenance, because there are a lot of mechanic simulators and stuff out there that could be implemented into the game. Like if a farmer's in an off season and they just ran the crap out of their equipment for a month or whatever, how much work are they going to have to do? Or the same thing for a trucker, or the same thing for a railroad conductor or something like that. Like what, how would you work that into the system?
I think it would be a cool concept. I wouldn't say it's necessarily feature creep at this point, but the thing is, it could be done again. We're going back to this system because we've kind of established how this game would work at its roots. So it would be the slot based, almost grid system without being on an actual grid. So your regions, you buy a plot on a region, a parcel. That way the game can, register and regulate where everything's controlled on. Then you do slots. That way the game knows. So you buy a building, you can put, say the building comes with 10 large slots, 5 small slots. I'm kind of thinking back to a game right here that's completely out left field from what we're talking about, which is State of Decay, which is a zombie survival game. You can build bases on there, and it uses a large small slot system. So say you buy a building, it's a medium warehouse that has 5 large slots, 5 small slots. Well, if you want to do car mechanic stuff, you could turn one of your small slots into a garage bay, like a service bay or something. And then, if you want to do semi trucks or large equipment, you would need a large slot to do a large equipment bay or service bay. And basically you pull the equipment in there, press whatever button, it registers the car or the truck or the machine or whatever it might be in that slot. Then it basically allows you to interact with it in the maintenance capacity. Now, how far you go into detail of that maintenance, like are we talking car mechanic sim level, like unbolting things, or are we talking like replacing components? Like it pulls up, like you can interact with a part of the vehicle and it's like, the engine's at 90%, the carburetor's at 20%, the spark plugs are at 5%, and you just swapping parts out, but you still have to source the parts. I mean, how far would you think that it would be appropriate? I mean, are we talking hardcore or are we talking casual?
Yeah, that's exactly where the balance I think has to come in, because if you take something like a mechanic simulator where they're literally going through every little point on there, like to take a wheel off, you take all your lugs off, then you pull that, that can get a little overwhelming, especially for like a farmer or something to do. But like if you take it to a mechanic in the town or whatever, and okay, for this couple, this time period, my stuff's getting worked on, and there's an actual mechanic working on it. Yeah, that could be something different because they would actually get more work in it. That's one of the questions that you kind of have to be up in the air and figure out, because it's like, what is too much and what is too little, I don't want, I was going to say, I don't want it to be like you pull into like a truck stop or something that has a quote unquote mechanic at it, and you go, oh, pay him $500 for a quick service, and then boom, instantly you're fixed. Yeah. But I think there should be some sort of period in there where you have to wait a little bit, whether it just be just a time-based thing, or you have to wait for parts to come in and then you can fix it. That's where it kind of raises the question.
You kind of run, if we did the bays, like these points, these trigger points. So essentially, in your term of like talking like a truck stop, say it's a map generated truck stop where you pull up to the little mechanic bay. It's got the, the glowing square that you can pull into, like some games do, the indicator that this is the maintenance shop. You pull into it, hop out, you go to the desk or whatever, open the menu. It opens the maintenance menu. It's like, hey, and then you click the mechanic and you're like, hey, what's the word for it? Inspect my truck. So you tell it, inspect your truck. And then it gives you a printout of what's wrong with your truck. If there's anything wrong, it can give you a condition of everything on your truck. And I think that's a simple way to do it and this is strictly speaking, the NPC aspect of repairs. So this could be at a truck stop. This could be at a mechanic in a town, at the dealership, whatever. Cause I think dealerships should kind of be server ran. Truck stops for the most part could be server ran. I mean, you could have the player owned option where players could build them, but I think you would always have, wherever you are, some type of service and sales and stuff like that that can be done by the computer. That way anyone can access it. But so you go in, it inspects your vehicle. It's like this. It tells you, hey, you got a flat tire. You select replace tire. And I think you add components to it, but we don't go part for part. Like, we're not talking pistons and individual pistons and rings or anything like that. I'm thinking like the engine, you click the engine, it breaks down. You have like crankshaft, piston set, and I don't know, whatever, camshaft or whatever. They could all be individual parts or not.
Right. Like a transmission could be a transmission, or an engine can be an engine that,
that
you just replace or something. A little bit more basic than super detailed.
But I think what you do, though, and this is getting into, obviously we're speaking of a, hypothetical yet semi-plausible game if the right studio got a hold of it. But you could go as far as to, not individual pistons, but an engine with pistons and crankshaft and maybe oil pan or something like that. But we're not talking individual rings and all that. We're not going nowhere. No one would want to go that far. If they want that, they can play a mechanic game. But the thing is you can just replace the whole engine. Like, you can just buy a long block,
right,
and swap the long block. So if you don't want to deal with that, you don't have to. But then, you have your carburetors and your fuel injection system, whatever. But, your most common things are your wear and tear. So if it's a gas motor, spark plugs, tires, wheels, brakes. Now, for a mechanic side, so say we wanted to create the mechanic job, and obviously you have to source all these parts, though, at the same time, whether it be as simple as an engine or individual. Again, back to that factory loop, you can create a car part factory if you want, and just set assembly lines. And see, like, I worked in a jelly plant for some time. There's not an individual line for each product that the factory makes. It's all the same factory line. We just rotate what's being ran. So if you're running a car part factory, you go, okay, today we're going to run brakes. Tomorrow we're going to run spark plugs. Friday we'll run tires, whatever it is. And again, you go back into the production of, oil, refinery, rubber, tires.
Yeah. Well, I mean, something too that, could be interesting is if you take like, hey, I pulled up to this mechanic because I blew a tire or my engine overheated or something like that, and you need a new radiator or tire or whatever.
Yeah.
Going back to that, like, I don't want the instant repair thing, even though I know it makes it harder and more tedious, but that realism aspect to it, it would be funny if you rolled up and it's like, hey, I need a new set of tires for whatever on my truck. And it's like, that shop has a random probability of it not being in stock, and you got to wait a couple hours for somebody to either pick up the order from somewhere else or the game to bring it over to you. That way you get that little bit more realism in it. And, I just think that could be a really interesting thing. And then also too, like with the mechanic side of things, like upgrading your vehicle, because I think everybody wants that. It's in every one of those games, ATS, railroading, or farming sim is the upgrades. And that should be a thing too. You go to the mechanic and you have to put in an order for your parts. They're not going to carry the upgraded stuff. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. We don't know. But that's the kind of thing is like, I want to upgrade the motor in this or upgrade these parts. Like, I got to put an order in, and then it gets brought in by a player or eventually by an NPC if it, whatever. So it could be very interesting.
And what I think could be cool too is, so this is kind of, we're expanding on another concept of the game now, is the maintenance side of the things, because everything has maintenance. And so say you blow a tire on your truck or your tractor or whatever, something breaks on whatever you're driving or operating because equipment breaks down. Let's say you do mechanic as a job, because now I see a completely different area of this game that's untapped. So you have your service bays that you can build, right? And that unlocks the ability to service the vehicle. But we go as simple as you can call service trucks. So your mechanics can buy service trucks and tow trucks and wreckers and things like that. And so, yeah, if you break down, and there's no tow truck available, you can do an NPC tow for whatever, $2,500 or whatever. It tows you to the nearest service station. And, it would probably, unfortunately, if you did like where it was a computer controlled tow, it would have to teleport you to the place and teleport the truck. It's the only way it would really work without being like endless AI code, which would be probably horribly clunky. But say you blow a tire on the side of the freeway, you call a mechanic, and there again, go into this market app, and you're like, hey, I need a tire for a truck here. Well, mechanic, what you would need is on the service truck. So now we're getting into, there's going to have to be an inventory system in the game to some capacity. You're going to have slots or storage or something on, whether it be on the vehicle or the person. And so I'm thinking you don't go in detail like a lot of these games do. Like, let's say you go to take off the tire at the site. So the first thing you would need is obviously you would need a jack. So that would be an item that you could buy, is either a jack or one of the air jacks or whatever, the semi-truck air jacks. And basically you can load it on the service truck, bring it with you out there. And then you grab the jack as an item, go to the truck, and you can see all the lift points. So it's not like a physics-based line of things. So you click the lift point that's closest to, the tire that's flat. You activate it, lifts the front of the truck up, simple animation stuff. Doesn't have to be crazy. Then you need either a toolkit or an impact. You could go either as simple as complicated, but then you just essentially click and hold on the tire and it'll loosen the tire for you and allow you to remove the tire off the truck.
Right.
And then you can do the whole, like, if it's a service truck and you have a tire changer on it, you just bring the tire that you're now holding to the truck, place it on the tire changer, interact button. It removes the tire. You grab a fresh tire out of the truck, put it on the tire, interact. It puts the tire on, then you put it back on the truck. Could be as simple as that. And it sounds a lot more complicated to explain it, but it's like 5 steps. It's more time than anything. Yeah. And so what you then do is you go as far as, like, because we were saying the upgrades. People, if you add upgrades and customization, people will go crazy because everyone's going to want to pimp their tractor or customize how their truck looks or whatever. And so that's where you kind of got to have that component to an extent, but not overly detailed.
Mm-hmm.
So say and again, this is where you probably need like a communication system in the game, whether it be a chat or a phone or something where you could call a mechanic, and like you could post on the thing, like, I need a mechanic here, and he can share his number or contact information. Then you can call him in game using a VoIP system. Call him, be like, hey, I got a truck. It needs a semi truck, on-road tire or off-road tire, whatever type it is. You don't have to go into like sizes or anything like that. It could just be on-road, off-road, whatever. You keep it kind of broad. So he brings you the on-road tire. It works. He may or may not have that tire. So like you said, if you go to like the Pilot or Flying J type truck stop that's computer owned, and they're like, hey, we don't have that tire, it's going to be an hour. You could wait, or you could try and call online and be like, hey, does anyone have a tire like this in this area? I'll pay you to bring it to me right now.
Oh yeah. I mean, that would throw a wrench into anybody's day. I mean, but again, it simulates that real life thing. I mean, it would be funny too, is if you roll up to a truck stop or whatever and try to get fuel, they're out of fuel and you're waiting on a guy to bring fuel truck by. Exactly. I mean, like that gets into the whole oil thing.
And I mean, the chances of these happening might necessarily be low, but the thing is, if you start getting into rural areas of the map, like out in the middle of nowhere, the chances could be higher. So you might want to stop at that gas station in the big city before you head off into the middle of the desert.
Right.
One, your prices would be higher and the parts availability is there. And, you always have your random chance for failures, tires, things like that. And that's where you get into like the physics mechanics of the game, which we kind of figured they'd have to have good physics regardless.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could, If you were making a game of this detail, you would have to have a good physics engine because, I mean, it could go down to like how hard you drive the truck because that could be a limiter on somebody that thinks they can roll 110 down the road with a full load.
Yeah.
But you're going to run the risk of your truck blowing up or you popping a tire, or if you're over pulling on your tractor, you're going to blow something up. And
Exactly.
then it makes the game more realistic.
Yeah, it'd speed up your degradation of parts and everything
Yeah.
else like that. But the thing is back to that mechanic bay is, so like say you blow your motor or you want to replace your motor, because you know that would be obviously be a thing we'd want to have in the game, because you can do it with farming sim, upgrading your tractor powertrains, ATS, you can swap engines. So you bring it to these bays, which are pre-configured, and it's basically what enables the repair. So a mechanic, like, they're not going to rebuild your motor on the side of the road. Ain't happening. So they can do tires and basic things like that we allow by the restriction of tools or equipment. And so when you go to a service bay, however, you have, and you know, you could have different levels of service bays too, or you could have slots within the slots. So you build a service bay and then you can buy like an engine hoist or what do you call it? A bin pack, like a hoist lift or whatever, things like that make things go faster or automated or whatever. But say you put the truck into the bay, whether it's towed or however it gets there and it needs an engine, you go into the bay, activate it, the truck locks into the bay so you can work on it and allows the working mechanics to work. And this would be performance friendly too. Is so like you go over to your engine hoist, bring it to the truck, activate it, it'll pull the engine out of the truck, the drivetrain. You're not going to have to like unbolt motor mounts and everything like that. You just need like a toolkit, and then when you use the engine kit with the toolkit, it'll allow it to pull out of the truck. Then you can essentially use the lift, put it on a bench. Then in there, it allows you to change parts out. So then you get the slots and you can swap it out with new pistons or whatever that you need to do. And you don't have to do full mechanic unbolting stuff. It's steps that allow you to do that. And then you can get into, you know, the whole, again, back to this market. The whole game's revolving around this market at this point. Is you pull the engine out of your tractor, your stock engine that came in your little 50 horsepower tractor, you're swapping out for an 85 horsepower or a rebuilt motor. Maybe mechanics are pulling these motors, putting a new motor in for them and rebuilding them and upgrading them and turning around and selling these engines to people.
Yeah.
So then you're going to have the marketplace flooded with, oh, I got an 85 horsepower rebuilt for a John Deere 3010 or something like that. And it'll work. And then obviously for UI simplicity and for players, you know, when you look on the store, like when you highlight the engine, it would say compatible with this tractor, this tractor, this tractor you own, or this truck or whatever. It'll either say, hey, or if it doesn't work with anything you have, it'll have a big red X and it'll be like not compatible with anything you own. So you don't accidentally buy it and then like, oh, this doesn't work with anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just opens up that whole possibility, and people like that. I need to constantly look at, you know, the market to see what's on there. Well, what do you think, you know, like as far as like studio size, do you think it would take studios like Giants or SCS or, you know, or can an indie developer make a game like this? I mean, it sounds like a pretty detailed game. I don't know.
I think it would take, it could work with the size of someone like SCS or Giants because they're pretty large studios at this point, but it would have to be their only focus.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be able to focus on maps or DLCs or anything like they do for any other games they have, but they would have to definitely bring in like some API geniuses from like an MMO universe that understand how networking works.
Yeah.
Because and like I said, if you broke it down to doing this interesting scaled map, because that's kind of how Truckers MP works, is it loads instances. So if no one's in an area, it doesn't load that area. But at the same time, as if we're talking a persistent world where crops are growing or production lines are running, it has to run back in netcode to tick the timers to let these things move. So you're running into some pretty substantial server space. You're going to have some processing power, because even if it's not rendering stuff, it still has to do the calculations for everything in the background as they change. But like I said, the thing about this game is it seems like we've gone from just a simple thing. It's about this market, this new used player versus computer market is, I mean, that would give you your interest though. In the, like we were saying, is say it takes 5 days to grow a crop in real time. And I mean, that's not unfeasible. I mean, it's not going to be for your instant players that want the instant satisfaction, but say, a player, you go, okay, I got 5 days to grow a crop. I got other things I can do in that time. But you're still going to want to get on every day to check that dang market.
Oh yeah.
You're every day you're going to want to see what's new.
Yeah. You're going to want to look for the deals. You're going to want to see, especially if you're like a trucker or something.
Yeah.
Or you go back to that thing where you said like looking for help type posts. Like if you want to do that to go make some money too, like that's the option there. So it gives you that. Like I think we're in a unique time, and we've been getting to this time in gaming where like multiplayer has been around long enough. These simulator games have been around long enough. Everybody likes playing. I mean, there's a big following of people that like playing simulators, farm sim ATS. It's just what's missing, I think, and why we kind of think of games like this is like people like to do the NPC stuff. Like there's definitely that group of people that likes to get on and just mess around with NPC missions and do this, whatever. But I think there's a lot of people too that like that player to player interaction, whether you're an RP or whatever, like you like that whole player market side of things where it's just not like, oh, let's go look at what NPC missions are here today. It's like, no, I want to go help somebody that's playing the game and actually help them with their progress rather than just feeding it into an NPC into the black hole of the game where it just never comes back,
Exactly. You lose your satisfaction.
Yeah. So, I mean, seeing game studios like Giants or SCS like come together and make something like this would be freaking awesome because they have everything already. Like the functionality of their games work.
Yeah.
It's just bringing it together is going to be the hard, just making it compatible. And I don't even want to begin to think about what coding looks like for it or, making, I mean, that's just a crazy nightmare. But the fact is like, you have multiple game studios and development that's been going on around these games. It's just getting it all packaged into one game would be the challenge.
Yeah, and I think you could solve it with something like, say, for example, and I know they've collaborated a bit with them in the past, but like SCS, if they were to work with like the Trucker MP guys on like a professional level and are like, what have y'all figured out to do to get these servers to handle 5,000 players potentially? And you're like, I think the thing for this is you really have to push the game to be coded to rely on the servers for performance more than the PC. And I mean, the PCs are going to struggle enough in their sense with the graphics because we want it to be a beautiful game.
Right.
But I think that back-end coding, again, is the server has to be able to pack it and manage this so smooth. And the thing is, the good thing is so if you're transitioning between zones, I would assume, again, we're not devs, is say you go from region to region. So like from Omaha to, I don't know, Billings or something. I know they're completely different states, but I'm just saying city to city, region to region. You have that transition where you're just freeway or road or whatever it is, where there's nothing that's really going to do other than scenery to make it look pretty. That's your loading window between the performance. So if no one's in the block behind you and you're moving on to the next, the block behind you can unload. And then you're going to be loading into the next one once you get within render distance, which is fine. But you have to find a way to do the calculation. And again, someone like the Trucker MP guys, they kind of understand this because they managed to somehow do it with ATS in the early days. And ETS especially. And ETS is a much larger map at this point than ATS is. But it can be done. And the farming, like I said, is if you limit it to somehow controlling placement, because as you've seen, like when we play farming sim and start placing stuff, the more stuff you place, the more performance it affects.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you limit it to the slot system, and now this would, you could sit here refining this for days and days and days and days and days of how these slots would work. But if you basically say this area of the farm is this large slot and it's going to be a field, and basically all you do is you tell that slot, I'm going to be farmland, or it's going to be mineable or whatever, a mining plot. then that enables the code to allow you to use farming machines on it or mining machines or whatever and actually dig it up. And so outside that block, that it doesn't have to render ground deformation on that level or whatever, but you can use the equipment on it and it would look right. And it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect squares or whatever like that, but it's not going to magically just produce a farm field and you just put seeds in it and magically it grows. It's not going to work that way. But if you did that right, and this is kind of going into kind of the back of what you said, is like the target audience for this game. Like, who is this game going to appeal to as a whole? Are we saying this is a hardcore, there's no easy way to play this game? Or is it going to be a simulator style, but it can hold your hand?
Yeah. I mean, I think it appeals to both of those groups in a way, right? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like there's aspects like we talked about that could appeal to the hold my hand type thing, especially with the mechanic thing. Like, you get the detail, but you don't go into the nuts and bolts, like, you know, quote unquote nuts and bolts, but like literally you're not pulling bolts off a car or doing that stuff, but you're getting your hand held a little bit in the sense of like, hey, this is, you know, I need to remove this engine. This is how I do it and move on. But I feel like there's also the aspect and the grindy aspect of it with people that, like, if they want to get into the farming, they make a large farm and they have lots of plots, like with your slot system. And then that in turn makes their overall time in it a bit more grindy because they have more stuff to manage. But you can also be a truck driver that's just like, I'm going to hop on today and I'm going to pick up loads and drive them from point A to point B and just make it real easy. And you don't have to do much. You just do that and say, okay, I'm done for the day. But it also opens up the door to like people. I mean, we didn't really talk about this, just a thought that came to my head, but like you could have businesses in the game that work with other players. Like that's the whole point. It's like you get on and play multiplayer, but like you could essentially be a player that hops on and invites 5 of your buddies to get on. You guys run a trucking company out of one building. And then you take the grindiness of being like a solo trucker into like, I'm going to disperse everything between 5 guys and we're just going to kill it and make a bunch of money and, you know, make a whole business. So, I mean, like, I feel like it could be taken in any way. And that's where like the balance of it could be really, it would take time to figure out, but like you can kind of cater to all of those aspects of it. Whether you want to hop on and just do quick stuff, go from, and that's another thing. You can hop on and do quick in-state transfers or in the county transfers, or you can be like, I want to be a long-haul trucker and I want to drive from freaking Nebraska to California or something like that product. So it just depends really on what the player wants to do, I think.
I agree. Now, would you want there to be like quick jobs, like essentially contracts of borrowed equipment on Farming Sim or something like ATS where you do quick jobs where you just hot seat for an NPC company?
I think so, because I think that everybody's going to have a place to start out with. Exactly. And that seems to be kind of the thing that all those games do to get you that starting money. Mm-hmm. So you start off with your starting amount, which is set by the game. And then you get in and start working from there. But then you kind of hit a point to where like, okay, I've run out of stuff to do on my farm. Now I need to go do like quick jobs to get money. I still think that should be in there, but I think it should be balanced in a way to where like it's more beneficial for you to find player made jobs and orders and stuff like that because they pay more or something versus you know, getting you away. Like use it as a stepping stone and use it as stuff for the players that don't want to get too involved with it to kind of do something. But then like if you see a job pop up that's like, it could be a quick job, it could be a county transfer, something like that, or within the state that you're like, yeah, I could drive this truck from here to here and take me an hour and make 2 times as much money or whatever. So I think it all should be there like that.
I agree. So off of that, controls, keyboard, mouse, controller, wheel. I mean, obviously I feel like wheel support would be kind of important with it being a trucking sim.
I think so. I think again, it should be both. Like, I think you could make it simple enough because, I mean, obviously ATS and Farm Sim and a lot of those simulator games can run off of keyboard and mouse and controller.
Yeah.
So I think support should be there for both. And then I think obviously if you want to run wheel support, if you're just doing trucking, or you can even use it for the farming or whatever, railroad. Like you could have all those supports be in there.
I
I
agree.
I agree.
I think going off the back of that again, PC only or crossplay?
Oh, that's a tough one because
Now, what if I could say, now hear me out on this, because I know this is a debate we have often. NASCAR 25, for example.
yeah,
So a lot of these games, they build them for consoles and port them to PC.
yeah.
Now, what would we say if they built it for PC and ported it to console?
I mean, you know my opinion on this. I think these games are all built on PC. You're not making a game on an Xbox.
No.
It just doesn't work like that. So I think it's ridiculous when they make a game and they're like, it's going to be on console only. It's like, you made it on a PC. Like, I understand that certain things have to be ported over and things have to change. But in my opinion, the game would, I think, be a better game if it was made specifically for PC.
Yeah.
Because you could do a lot more with it. And then I think, eventually porting it to console. Now, I mean, it could be a whole nother podcast on it, but like mod support for this, like, could be insane.
Oh, absolutely.
And I just don't think, I don't know. I say that I don't think it'd be possible, but like Farming Sim does do it now. Like console can get mods.
Yeah, you can, as long as they're like, quote, official mods or certified mods or whatever. But
yeah,
I mean, if we're talking that though, like you brought up modding support, so scalability, like we discussed it mainly being focused as an MMO, but now, like, again, back to ATS, it's like Trucker MP, for example, is you can't run a dedicated Trucker MP server.
Yeah.
The way it's set up. But ATS ended up introducing Convoy mode, which allows you to have smaller groups up to 128 players through dedicateds. Now, could this game have the functionality to drop the scale down? Now, like we said, there's an NPC computer ran market in the game. So you could technically play this game by yourself.
Right.
And it may not be as fun, but it's playable.
Yeah, I think it's playable for sure, but I think if you're going to scale, like, I think the game would shine most if you had large servers of people. I agree. Because you need the amount of people across the U.S., or wherever you make this game based in. Obviously starting in the U.S., but like, I think if you were to scale it down and say like, hey, I wanted to start a server up with my buddies and there was like 10 of you playing or 5 of you playing, I think that you should have the option in there to like say, we're going to take a state, or we're going to take 2 states. And then like, that way you don't have the overwhelming, task of like NPC missions coming up where you have to drive across the country to get something. But I say, like, if you want to say, you want to start off in Kentucky, and you and your buddies, the 5 of you, want to get on there, and then like one guy wants to make a trucking company on the west side of Kentucky, the other guy wants to do a railroad company on the east, and people want to farm in the middle of Kentucky, like, that should be an option, I think, for you to do.
I agree.
Is just do a single area.
I think you should have the state option for sure.
Yeah.
And you could, essentially set it up in the dedicated config where you enable states. So you can enable Kentucky and Tennessee and Ohio and Indiana if you want. And, you could scale. Obviously, your hardware would have to be able to handle it. But the thing is you could open that up too. Because like I said, if ATS can support 128, then a dedicated hardware that a consumer would have could easily run 128 players. So you could easily do a state or 2. And if they're scaled right, it's a big enough area. You could set up production. And if you have the built-in productions and everything like that, but if you're going, oh, well, we want to do mining. Well, Kentucky's a bad example for mining because they do it in the eastern part of Kentucky all the time. But if you're, say, in Florida's not really known for their mining.
You're going to want to get a state like, I don't know, Alaska or something like that.
Because you could easily render the U.S. factor. But even in ATS, I know guys will drive coast to coast and do things like that. But as your group, you're not going to be like, oh, Joe's going to be in California, I'm going to be in New Jersey.
Yeah.
If you're playing with your buddies, you're going to be pretty close to each other. And if you do this modular regions and stuff like that, like you could be, say, Kentucky has 20 regions in it, 20 develop cities or whatever things. You could be like, okay, I'm going to be in Lexington, Chad can be in Frankfurt, whoever else can be in Louisville or whatever, and you each take a city and you kind of build your parcels out in your city and do your zones. Or if someone wants to farm, they go into a rural part of Kentucky, one of the farm zones or whatever like that. And you can do that. And then even if you did 1-to-1 scale, it wouldn't be that bad travel between the zones and it would be reasonable.
Yeah.
So I think that would have to be one of those. It wouldn't be launch day, but it could be expanded into and reduced down as long as it was toggleable.
Well, and I think too that it all depends on the player's play style, right? Like you said, there's guys that want to do the coast to coast stuff.
Yep.
They're going to probably be wanting to be on a public server or a server with a lot of people on it so that it makes sense for them to go coast to coast. They're not going to want to get on a server with 5 friends and do that. Or, I mean, you can have the option if you want to get on a small server with your friends and do trucking or something like that and do the coast to coast stuff. I mean, it's really up to you.
It's just you're choosing for an empty world at that point, other than, computer managed resources.
Exactly. And you're not relying on the multiplayer aspect.
It should be for that. I think that would be fair, is give people the option. And if they want to run a coast to coast server, obviously you're going to be limited by your hardware. And what your hardware can do is what you can do. But I think giving the opportunity to scale back the map or scale back the resource and give, toggles where you can toggle off this or reduce this time scale. So if you don't want to take a week to grow your crop, you can take a day or 12 hours or whatever. Give them the scalable options, because that's going to increase the appeal for the game, that people don't want to play as serious.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really versatile because it's essentially setting up the framework. Because like I said, we kind of got back to it's down to this market is the secret to this game.
Oh yeah.
Is the idea, because that's a huge appeal to me in games in general. Is I love these games where you can shop for a deal in a used market or search a scrapyard for a part or something like that, because the satisfaction and the dopamine rush when you find something that you've been looking for. You're like, no way this popped up here.
Yeah. And it could change your whole plan too, because I mean, there's been a lot of times in Farm Sim where we're like looking to do something and we're like just crunching numbers on like what we can afford in a playthrough or like what we want to do with our fields, and then like something pops up in the shop and we're like, that piece of equipment's a great deal, and then it changes completely like what our path was going to be based on what we can afford. So I mean, it can really shape that,
I think okay, so from there, let's go with an interesting concept I had for this. What's a feature we haven't discussed that you would like to see in this game? It doesn't have to go into huge elaboration, but what's something that you think we might have not covered that you would like to see? It could be just an individual feature.
Individual feature.
Like I got one for you, junkyards.
Yeah, junkyards could be really cool. Yeah.
So you can go search a junkyard and there can be, and it's not, you don't have to go in the literal like car mechanic where you're breaking down the cars or the machines, but like you could go in there and you don't know, every day it recycles or every week it recycles, and you can go in there and there's old semi trucks and tractors and bulldozers and cranes and stuff like that, and you might be able to find the part that you're looking for, like an engine, like a Caterpillar C12 and a crane that'll fit your semi truck. I mean, I'm not saying that's possible in real life, but you don't know that it might have the engine you're looking for, something completely different. And it's just, you're looking for, your brands and stuff like that. You're like, oh, look, there's John Deere tractors. Let's see if it has any rare parts in it that are upgraded or something. And, oh, it's got the tires. I don't have to pay $2,000 for this tire. I can pay $20 and yank this tire off in the junkyard. And you're going to have these people that start hoarding, their quality parts, because I think it's cool is as your machines naturally degrade, like you could have random failures. So like you might be going through a field with your seeder and it jams. And so you have to hop off the machine and go interact with it to clear the jam. And it doesn't have to be a mini game, but it might be a whole D to knock it loose or something, just because it's annoying. And as it gets worse and worse condition, it's going to start having more and more random failures. Like you might go to do a row and one of your seed heads on it stop spitting seeds out, so you completely miss a stripe on the field. It completely misses the seeding.
Yeah.
And that's because you didn't service it. And it could be as simple as, you call an NPC out, and you put it in a spot on the yard, and the NPC takes so long and it's repaired, but you can't use it till it's repaired.
Right.
and things like that. Or you could call someone, obviously a maintenance guy, he can come out and fix it right then if you got
Yeah.
one. And you get in this huge thing of like people are going to be checking on your mechanics and people are going to be hopping on to see if there's any work
Yeah.
because your
Well,
farmers will do that.
yeah, and that brings me to, like, we briefly touched on a bit of like a mechanic or a feature that I would like to see would be like, we talked about the weather a little bit, but I think natural disasters could play a huge
Oh,
factor into
yes.
this. And I think that a mechanic would be cool, is that, like, the game could have a random event happen, or depending on the season, and then, like, say, a tornado comes through, or you got an earthquake or a
Yeah.
landslide or whatever, but then it could wreck some of your roads,
Yeah.
or like wreck a bunch of track or something like that. And then,
Yeah.
like, that all of a sudden pops up, and then, like, you see it and people are like, well, we need to logistically bring equipment out for the game or whatever to
Yep.
these locations, or else, you're going to have to detour around somewhere. Like, I think that would be an interesting aspect to the game.
Yeah.
That
Road
can really,
closures, hazards.
yeah, road closures, but they're fixable road closures.
Exactly.
It's not just like a random generated event that's going to take like an hour to fix itself. It's like, no, like, that road closure is going to be there until somebody on the server brings the supplies needed to fix it.
Yeah,
Or
trees go down
yeah,
on your road. You got to get a chainsaw to clear them, or
yeah, that'd be cool.
something to push them off the road, or
Yeah,
whatever it might think. I think weather would be, because I kind of thought about that earlier, was like events, like world events, like
Mhm.
California suffering record flooding and certain things are affected, or this
Yeah,
area is experiencing a drought, so the price of food's gone up because they can't grow
yeah,
any in that state, and things like this, and it brings the market up. And some, like, oh, earthquake struck this town in I don't know, California or Nevada or whatever, and all the production facilities in that town are down until power is restored.
yep,
And so you suddenly, the tractor you ordered that was going to take 3 days to get here, now it's indefinitely
yeah,
held till the power's fixed, either naturally over time by the
yeah,
game, or if players want to hurry up and fix it and have the means, whether they source equipment, or it could be as simple as bringing equipment there with a truck and dropping it off in a drop zone, and then X
yeah,
amount of
exactly.
time. Or if it's a mudslide over a road, if you got miners with bulldozers, the dozers can push the mud off the road.
Yeah, exactly. And it gives us that, like, if you were making this game and you wanted to fill those voids of, like, downtime, like if it's the winter months and, like, oh no, a blizzard blew through and all the roads are closed because of snow. Well, somebody over here that lives in that area has a bunch of snow plows. They got to go out there and clear the roads. And I mean, like, stuff like that to kind of keep it interesting in those times. Like, and it could happen whenever, really. And it's just like one of those things. Oh, I haven't been on the game in a while. Get on, and it's like, oh, massive blizzard. I can
Yep.
go help this or whatever. And then, I mean, it can be endless.
It literally can be endless, and you could have a DLC called Roadworks DLC where you can
Yeah,
repave roads.
exactly.
Um,
So, what do you think? Like, if this game were to be picked up and started in development, you had to choose a name for it, what would you name
ooh.
it?
I mean,
It's
at this
tough.
point, we might as call it a menu management simulator, but I mean, I don't think that
Yeah.
exactly works.
Yeah.
Uh Man, something with logistics or something of that nature would
Yeah, I
be
mean, it's
pretty
it's
nice.
definitely a logistics-based game. Um,
Let's see.
Man, like, I mean, you're doing it in the state. It's massive. So, I mean, I don't know. Logistics
Uh,
World or something crazy, I don't know.
let's see. I'm looking at see some prompts. Let's see. What do we
It's
got?
tough because there's so much in it that, I mean, you could get into the aspect of adding in emergency response system to the game. I
Oh
mean,
my
like,
gosh.
it encompasses all of logistics simulation into one game. And I mean, we hadn't even touched on boats or planes or anything like that. I mean, like, it could literally
Oh,
go in any
planes would be a whole nother
directions.
monster.
Yeah.
Oh, uh,
Yeah.
so logistics simulator is a game already, so that doesn't work.
Gotcha.
So maybe Well, it definitely would be the simulator to end all simulators.
Yeah.
So you said logistics. I'm looking right now. I'm generating some prompts.
Yeah.
The ultimate
I mean, it's
simulator.
just
No.
the ultimate
One
logistics.
system, one world. Yeah.
I mean, it could literally
You could
be
do
anything.
World of Logistics.
Yeah, World of Logistics is a good one. I mean that hits it all.
World
I mean,
of Logistics from farms to freight. Every
Yeah.
system depends on you.
I mean, it literally does. It's a full on, like, if no players are in there, nothing's really happening type thing for the most part.
We could give it a working title. Let's see. So let's see. From farms to freight, it implies too much on the farms. Like the farms, yeah, it's a core of it, but
Yeah.
with the production and everything, we're talking oil and mining and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
It
really does.
Literally endless.
I think World of Logistics. Let's do World of Logistics, the ultimate simulator.
There you go.
I
World
think
of
that
Logistics, the ultimate simulator. All
And
right.
obviously, it might change if someone like SCS picked it up, but they'd probably call it
Yeah.
American Logistics Simulator. But
So what do you think? Would you sell it or shelve it?
I'll sell it. There's no
Yeah.
ifs on that.
That's it. I'm saying sell it too. I think if we look at it from a outsider's perspective, we're not working on this game right now. It's not a work in progress game. It's just an idea, but all the core parts to the game are there. Like, they are possible. They do work.
I think they're
just not in the same game. It's just not in the same game. It's not.
It's just it would
together.
take a studio looking at it and going, "Would this be worth our time and money?"
Yeah,
to make it.
yeah.
I mean, it's developable, but the amount of modeling and it's that back end framework. Like the menus, all that's not really the challenge. It's making it work on a network.
Yeah.
And making it sync between everyone and figuring out that time is a lot of balancing that would make it the true artwork it could potentially be, because you'd have to balance out that how long do things take without it taking too long or too little time.
Yeah.
So if it's too quick, people are going to get bored. If it takes too long, people are going to get bored. You got to find that balance in the middle. But I say sell it.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Based off that, quick recap on it. Basically, a simulator where you can do anything like farming, trucking, production, mining, oil making, even as far as the
railroading.
Railroading,
yeah.
Shipping, like maybe boats or something. I don't think the game would be on a global scale. It would be country based. But I think that's a good grasp of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you said, it's the simulator to end all simulators. It's putting all the simulators currently there into one.
I think if this game existed, I would not need to pick up ATS or Farming Sim again.
Yeah. Which, I mean, could lead to a lot of I wouldn't say like a bad blood, but like that could turn to some of those developers and go, we don't want a part in that because we want to sell our own game and make our own money. But like, I don't know. I mean, I just think that, like we said, the base aspects of it are there in a bunch of different games. It's just compiling it into one game and making it function as if like you were just playing a singular one of those games. Like, I would want the game, if I were to buy this game, I would want it to function as well as like Farming Sim does or as ATS does, but across the board and no matter what aspect you do, that it just feels the same throughout. That would be tough, but I think it could be done. I think it could be done, and I think that a lot of people would be into it.
I agree 100%.
Yep.
But I think that's the point of the episode, where we've reached the end of the pitch.
Yeah.
We've decided this game, if it could be made, should be made.
I agree.
And we're going to do another episode probably next week. Joe, do you have any ideas? Since this was my pitch, what give them a little taste of what we might pitch next week.
Oh man. Well, I've got a few ideas.
Give me a genre.
It's a simulator. So, but it's a different simulator. It's not a work simulator. It's a simulator that you would let's just say use a wheel and pedals for.
Okay.
and maybe compete with other people in. There's something very similar, very popular has already been made. But there's an aspect of it that I think could make an interesting game that people would like. So,
All right. So stay tuned for the next episode of Press Start to Pitch.
yep.
To all the listeners that might be out there listening to this episode right now, thank you for checking it out. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed it.
Yeah.
We promise in the future. I know this was a simulator, and Joe's pitch next week is going to be another simulator. But we promise those aren't the only ideas we have. We have games across wide ranges that we've been briefly discussing. But that's going to be it for this episode. So until next time, everyone, y'all have a great one.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for listening. Bye.